Live from iRacing's virtual Wild West Motorsports Park in Sparks, Nevada, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to Week 2 of the 2023 Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship. Things got underway just 7 days ago in Bark River, and we head west to the Silver State for the second week of 4 on this Pro 2 campaign. And as always, happy that you're with us on Racecraft TV. Tonight it is Wild West that plays host to round number 2 of 4. And we're happy to be alongside with all of you tuning in at home for the ride. Our producer downstairs, Zach Johnson, Nolan Rempel, myself, Evan Pasoko, in the broadcast booth with you. And Nolan, we will start this evening as always with the Spec class, where Cody Winecki took home the win a week ago. Try to continue that momentum here into tonight's set of double features.
And it's looking to be a good start already for that 903, already second place on the qualifying sheets. But we take a look, of course, at the Wild West Motorsports Park. It is so different compared to the Bark River International Circuit that we saw just 1 week ago. This track, a lot more flowing, but unlike what could sometimes be called its stadium counterpart over here on the iRacing service, the Wild Horse Pass. The Wild West Motorsports Park, as we were talking just prior to this event, it tends to be a much more of a point-and-shoot track with only 4 hairpins to round out the circuit.
Yeah, this racetrack clocks in with only 4 proper turns, and they're all basically hairpins. There's 4 tabletop jumps. You get a massive drop-off jump after turn number 1, a bit of a rhythm section as you head over the turn number 2. This racetrack located just 10 minutes outside of the city of Reno. It's a great place to watch a race, and it is a great place to drive in both the Pro 4s or the Pro 2s here on the iRacing service. Of course, the Pro 2s being our hosts here this afternoon. I mentioned the double feature format. As always, these drivers will have 2 full opportunities in this Spec class to earn points over the course of tonight. And this is a thing that we always talk about when we're referring to Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship, Nolan. Nolan, is look at all the points you get in the night. And, of course, it's Cameron Begeshik, Cody Wienecke, 48-47, top of the board. Crystal King, Drake Matag, and Keenan Kusin, the top 5. When you only have 4 weeks and 8 total races, you really cannot afford to have just an okay or an off night. These drivers, if they expect to be champions, are going to need to be finishing in contention for the race win week in and week out. And we'll see how those names at the top of the board, mainly Begeshik and Wienecke, how consistent they can see as we roll into the middle part of this season.
And, of course, that's what helped to bring up all the aggression over at Bark River for the season opener, because as a lot of racers know, when you have a season that's as short as this one is, that very first race, even the first race of 2 in that event, it will set the momentum of how your entire season could go down. You have to have a strong opener. That's something that Begeshik was able to have, and he's already 1 point up, but you can tell that Wienecke going to be definitely looking to reel that gap in and see if he can't overtake him for the points lead here at Wild West.
The qualifying session has drawn to a close. We are ready to say let's go racing for feature race number 1, and it is Cody Wienecke on pole position, courtesy of the top 3 invert. Third best in quali, number 1 on the grid, and he'll be joined by that 278 of Crystal King in second. Then Keenan Kusin comes into tonight 5th at the points. He was the actual fastest truck in the qualifying session. He'll get 3rd, and then Trevor Teal starts where the positions reflect the qualifying order in 4th position. Drake Matag to be on the inside of row number 3 at a P5, and it is Cameron Begeshik rounding out your top 6.
Christina Ryan brings it up in that 7th spot. To round out the top half of the field will be Miles Morse on that 4th row. Row 5 to round out the top 10, going to be Alexander Good and Kyle Knott. It is Cohen Attar down on the 11th spot with John Nix in 12th.
And continuing on through, lucky number 13 starting spot tonight goes to Blake Reynolds. He'll be joined alongside in 14th position by Solomon Borschinger. Then you've got Austin McLaughlin in 15th position and Tyler Lugo Vickery, P16. All the trucks who participated in the qualifying session, and it is a look top to bottom at your Racecraft starting grid. 10 laps on deck. Then we'll invert the top 3 and do it again for a second feature race in this spec category, Nolan. So first race of the night, all these trucks equal. The only difference right here, right now, the drivers.
And, of course, 10 laps going to be the distance, just as it was at Bark River. And, of course, it is going to be on that second moto as well of the night. Again, 10 laps, 20 total for the event in this one. And we'll be seeing, again, what these drivers will be able to do for us here over the course of the night. One notable driver here that looks like might not quite be able to make it to the call, going to be your 3rd place starter, Keenan Kusin. Just had a technical throughput problem. So that 03 truck starting 3rd might find himself all of a sudden on the back foot for the rest of the event tonight.
Yeah, that's why you can see his starting spot currently open on the left-hand side there of row number 2. That's why these trucks are taking so long to roll off, is basically the sim is giving the maximum amount of time allotted because it shows that there are missing trucks on the grid. So Keenan has since reconnected to the iRacing service after dropping out due to a connection issue on his side of the handshake, but he is not there yet, and we will see how long does that iRacing official pace truck wait at the front of the field. Will Keenan appear on row 2, or is he going to miss the grid? It would be a big blow to the driver, and there he is in the nick of time. Keenan's going to make the start. A little bit of drama for the driver who is fastest in qualifying.
60 seconds left before we roll things off, and you can see their position just shy of that final corner up at the top of the hill before we get set to blast things back down into the valley, then back uphill for a sharp turn 1, a deceptively tight turn 1, and I think turn 1 is really one of the best corners on this racetrack to go for an overtaking opportunity, not just because it's at the end of the longest straight, but because you can throw it in so deep into that corner with how the uphill braking zone actually allows you to jump on the brakes that much later. Turn 2, though, it's going to be the one that's going to be the one to watch on these opening laps, as that's right at the end of that downhill, as you mentioned, the fall-off jump, and I've seen so many drivers in the past overshoot that turn and find themselves flying off the circuit altogether.
And you can, turns 1 and 2 are what are referred to as the true hairpins on the circuit because they are perfect 180-degree corners. The other two, turn 3 is actually more than a 180-degree turn, and turn 4 is a little bit less so. But again, it's a real point-and-shoot racetrack with basically hairpins all around. But you can see where these drivers are parked. You see that kind of whoop section on the run from turns 3 to 4. That's going to be what sets up these drivers for their entry into these corners. As these trucks are going to be upset, you're going to have to make sure you land right to be able to rotate through the corner and get what you want out of it. It's going to be a 10-lap sprint in race number 1 for the Pro 2 Spec class. Pace truck set sail, and the front row of Cody Wienecke and Crystal King see the green flag in the air. Pretty clean, all things considered. A couple of trucks going to go wide as they fight off at turn number 1. Now more contact in the midfield, but up front it's Wienecke controls the race lead. King slides in second, and one truck going to get turned around. I don't know who that was. It might have been Mageshik in front of the field, and one truck on its lid now towards the rear. That's Trevor Teal.
You heard Trevor Teal working the throttle there, trying to get the rear end with a bit of traction, and he gets that truck flipped back over on his wheels. He'll be back into this fight, albeit well down the field. The whole field accordioned up into that second turn, just like we feared it might. Up into the front, it's going to be Wienecke to lead the first lap to green. King second, Kusin third, and Drake Mittig able to work his way out. Mitag, he was able to work his way up to that 4th position. Christina Ryan secures 5th. We're single file back down to turn 1.
Crystal King trying to hang tight, stay in contention. Again, 1, 2, and 3 on the grid, the order in which they run now, with Wienecke leading King, leading Kusin, but plenty of close battles throughout the field. Everybody's single file at the moment. Turn 3 here is pretty tricky. I mentioned it's actually more than a 180-degree rotation, but it's uphill through the center of the corner, and issues now towards the rear there. That was at Bernani 1, and more issues now as Solomon Borschinger made contact in turn 2. That was, I believe, Mageshik, and he's not very happy over that exchange on the radio. That's the second truck on their lid already, and we're only 2 laps in to race number 1.
Most notably, though, out of those 2 trucks, one of them is back onto the racetrack, the other one is not, as Borschinger made his way down to pit road. We look over once again back up to the race lead, where Wienecke just try to keep the lights at Crystal King at bay. This field starting to spread out around the Wild West Motorsports Park. Got a bit of a fiercer fight for that 7th, 8th, and 9th position, with John Nix trying to keep Cohen Attard under fire, and see Mageshik right in this field as well, trying to see if that number 253 can work his way back into the field. And even further back, how about McLaughlin trying to work his way back up to the field as well?
He was doing a good job, but then caught the K-rail barrier on the inside of turn number 2, and McLaughlin went upside down and over. He was funning with Kyle Knott at the time, and that roll allowed 3 trucks to pass him. Teal, Vickery, and Good were all able to get on by. No real battle scars, but let's take a look at what happened. And for all of the driver-initiated contact that we've seen tonight, well, here's a good look at it. This is opening lap of the race. You talk about some of the contact in the midfield, and cars sliding all over the racetrack, blocking the road, and talk about how those whoops kind of set the nature of the cars into the corner. That's just a bunch of trucks getting into each other, and eventually Teal gets tipped through the turn, and Nolan, you talk about it's only 2-wheel drive, but using the steering on that truck to bring it back over. Teal's still in this race, P14 right now, not much to write home about, but certainly could have been worse.
Take a look at this one again. Is right there. Teal gets kicked up and over. You're going to watch that wheel and the throttle kind of shiver around on the truck as he tries to get that thing tipped over left, right. And hey, I'll give him credit. He made it work back on his wheels, and wasn't a hard roll. Next to no damage on that machine, just a bit inconvenience. That was, I think that was one of the best moments you could possibly have on iRacing, where it's like, oh no, anyway, and just keeps on going.
Yeah, Buddy's driving like Tom Entz out there in his Pro 2 truck, but it's keeping him in contention for this one, and you just saw Teal make a nice pass on Tyler Lugo Vickery. That one in the battle for 13th and 14th position, so that is a spot gained as Teal tries to minimize the damage. Again, it is not partial points here and partial points there. Both of these Pro 2 Spec features Nolan full points, and I made the point right before the start of the race that with a short season, you can't really afford off nights, so Teal is desperately trying to get back some of the ground lost, and somebody else just had a spin towards the tail end of the lap behind these guys. I think Vickery looped it off of 4, no real issue, and he continues on.
Vickery going to be down the field now as a result of that one. We'll check in on this, the fight for 6. Miles Morris pushing wide in turn 2, opens up the door, but a turn clips the barriers on the inside wall, and that will allow for Morris to go back through into turn number 3. Thought the 131 had him, but was too liberal with taking some wall out of that inside of that second corner. That upsets the 131, and the 73 able to pull just a little bit further clear. And this, so far, one of the tightest fights on the racetrack, and right behind them, John Nix, back in that 8th spot. Started down at 12th and trying to continue to advance his way back into the top half of this field.
He has picked his way through. Both him and Blake Reynolds have kind of followed each other through in lockstep. Started 12th, 13th, respectively. They're 8th and 9th. Even tossed Cohen Adder into that conversation. He started 11th. He's up to 7th. So all 3 of those trucks have gained 4 spots. Admittedly, it's not just from sheer speed. It's been from avoiding some of the contact, and there's some more. As they race off at turn number 2, it's the second time in as many laps that Cohen Adder has found the inside wall. The purple truck, P7 at the moment, the lead of a group of 4. He's got Reynolds, Nix, Mageshik all lined up behind them. This time by lap number 7, going to go to the books, and we'll have 3 laps to go in feature number 1.
The laps quickly winding down to the Wild West Motorsports Park, and Nix collects the wall off of 4, and that's going to cost some time, but he does keep it pointed in the right direction. But that's opened up the door for the 253 of Cameron Mageshik to try to work his way. He'll throw it to the inside of turn 1, make the move for 9. That's going to push things wide and almost into pit road on the right-hand side. Down the hill, back into turn number 2. The 253 hangs that one high and wide around the outside. Beautiful overtake there from Cameron Mageshik to work his way into that 9th position.
And to give Nick some credit as well, he got pushed basically onto the neighboring fairway off of turn number 2, fought back onto the racetrack, and then didn't go through Mageshik when they went back down to turn number 2. In the end, the 253 gets the position, but Nix is still there in contention to continue to fight this one out. And in front of them, there's the end of a pass as Cohen Adder is going to get passed up. Blake Reynolds, the driver, on the move at 2 laps to go.
Oh, he's not done yet, though. Adder working back to the bottom. He's going to get into it. Flip Reynolds over in turn number 1. Reynolds up and over, rolls it back on those wheels and keeps going to the 66. But Cohen Adder making that very clear, doors him into that opening corner and tips the 66 machine up and over. That's going to bump Reynolds all the way down to 10th.
There was a little bit of contact when the initial pass happened in turn number 4. And we talk about that uphill nature of one, throwing it in there. It's not a ton of contact, but it's just in the wrong spot. Reynolds up and over, back onto all 4 tires. Net loss of 3 positions with that contact. Reynolds all the way back down to P10 after having done so much work to make up positions. Meanwhile, up front, the white flag is in the air for Cody Wienecke. Couple of quarters left to go. He's been in control from the start.
Wienecke so far has been able to rock it away, but of course this means he's going to be starting down to that 3rd position over when we get down to the second race tonight in your Spec category. So far, the fight's still on for second between Crystal King and Kusin. With only 1 corner left to go, it looks like King will be able to maintain that run for second.
Trying to hang on to P2. Late peak from Keenan Kusin is not going to be enough. And up front, the torchbearer for feature race number 1 is Cody Wienecke. It's his 2nd feature race win in as many weeks, leading all 10 laps in race number 1. He takes home max points. Couple more battles across the line. Cohen Adder will finish ahead of Mageshik in the battle for 6 and 7. And a little bit of sidewall action. What happened to Kyle Knott in the final corner in 4?
was all by himself, so whatever happened to Kyle Knott, it would have had to have been self-inflicted, but that's going to cost him one of those few crucial positions. He will end up not finishing the opening race here tonight, and that's going to bump him down to that 15th spot, and that's going to lead us to our results.
If we take a look at the full race results for race number 1, Wadecki's final margin of victory, 1.402 seconds over Crystal King. Another podium for her. On the 03, Keenan Kusin gets in P3. Those drivers will be the invert as we look to feature number 2. And then you had Drake Matag, a feature winner from a week ago, P4. And Christina Ryan quietly sneaks through some of the chaos and snags a P5.
6th place will go to Cohen Attard with Cameron McGeshake down at that 7th spot. John Nakes will bring it up at 8th. Blake Reynolds and Trevor Teal able to work their way up into the top 10.
And on the second page, the drivers who did not find the success that they were hoping for, you got McLaughlin, Good, Lugo, Victory finishing on the lead lap, and even bigger issues for the likes of Morse, Knott, and Ward. Solomon Borschinger takes up the rear, having not made it past lap number 3. So top to bottom at your full race results for feature race number 1 in the Spec class this afternoon, Nolan. One more to go, and there's your look at what happened to the 36 all on his own. Kyle Knott got caught by the whoops, and it upset the truck into the hairpin. Anytime that truck is kind of loaded on the suspension, not settled down, and you try to whip it into a corner like that, that could be the results, and it cost him a handful of spots late.
Well, that's one of the hazards of that 4th and final corner, right? If you want to be quick and nail that apex, will be on the brakes as late as possible. You have to start turning in when you're right between the 1st and 2nd of those whoops leading down into that final corner. The problem for him was he just chucked it away too aggressively, and it would have been fine if he had been a bit more square and centered with the gravity. But the problem was, with the angle that he went off, the right side of the truck had lifted up and off the ground, so it landed left side first, and that caused a massive weight shift, and once those right sides dug in, well, that was it. It was over.
So now these drivers have an opportunity to enjoy a bit of a warm-up session before heat race number 2, Nolan. Again, there's a little bit of nuance to Wild West in terms of how you attack those rolls in the table jumps and the whoop sections and whatnot in between all of these hairpins. Each driver can certainly find a style, but I don't think there's much that they're going to learn in the 3 minutes here. I think the biggest takeaway is you're going to want to have a clean race, and for about half the field, they couldn't do that in the first feature.
It's difficult to do when you're in tightly nicked battles like this, especially, of course, in trucks that are made to kind of beat around a little bit. They're made to take a hit, and that was shown by how many trucks we saw overturn and end up just keep going like nothing had happened, only losing a few spots, like it was kind of like when a Mazda Miata spins off at a road course and just rejoins without any sort of incident. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of the same when we get down to that second feature here in just a couple seconds.
You see the clock tick away. Final couple of corners for some drivers to get these trucks tuned up. And we will take a look down truck side at your starting grid for feature race number 2. And this brings us to the halfway point of the Spec season. 3 races done so far. Wadecki's won 2 of them. Can he go for another? Your top 3 invert means that Keenan Kusin gets pole position for this feature. Crystal King, exactly where she was as is in P2. And your feature race 1 winner, Cody Wadecki, ends up in 3rd. Drake Matag was the first winner of the year a couple of weeks ago at Barker River. He won the first feature there. He's looking to find himself back in victory lane. He's P4 for this one. Christina Ryan will start in P5, and Cohen Attard in 6th.
That's going to once again bring up that 7th spot here of Cameron McGeshake with John Nakes down in 8th. Blake Reynolds and Trevor Teal in 9th. Austin McLaughlin and Alexander Good rounding out the top 12.
And again, the rest of this starting grid based on finishing position earlier. So Vickery, Morse, Knott, Ward, and Borschinger will round out your 17 truck grid. Pace truck going to head off and away, and let's see if Keenan Kusin and Crystal King can get to work on the front row. Both looking for their first Spec wins of the year. Green flag in the air.
Kusin maintaining that lead down to 1, and it's going to be King bullied out wide, down to 4th. The whole field according up in the opening corner. We fire back down the hill, and here comes Dre Batag looking for the inside line.
And look at the mistake. Keenan goes way too deep in turn number 2. 3 wide for the race lead. Keenan Kusin on the inside. The new leader, though, is Drake Matag for a moment. And now Wienecke slides through the inside. He'll jump up now to the number 3 spot. Crystal King had a bad turn 1. She's back in the conversation as she'll fight back for second. But despite the bubble, it is Kusin leading off of 4 on lap 1.
And critically, no turn 2 pileup this time. The whole field still packed together. We are short Solomon Borschinger, who opted not to compete in the second race. That might end Borschinger's championship hopes. Crystal King still looking for that race lead, but Keenan Kusin looks to have that secured for now, and it is Wienecke to get a bit unsettled in the fall-off jump down through turn 2, and now being hit from behind once, twice by Drake Matag, and now we're going to stack him up in the second corner.
Yeah, that was a bit of a backup, but I know Drake Matag is not happy about that one. He got pushed into Wienecke, and look at that trip, well off-road for the 13 truck, who was way out of contention. Up and over the K-rail, not what Cohen Haddard wanted it in the 131, I should say. That's going to put him way back. Again, Wienecke got hit by Matag, but it wasn't Matag's doing. And now more trucks spinning off of the outside of turn number 4 as Kyle Knott, the 36, is turned backwards, and he'll lose a ton of time.
And he would have had some help. You saw Blake Reynolds was kind of stopped in the same place with them, so I have a feeling they might have gotten into each other. The fourth and final corner. Whoa, one up and over, turn 1. And that's going to be McLaughlin that's rolled it, and oh, he's going to get drilled by the 36 of Kyle Knott, and I think that would have been, oh, we got another one up and over, and I think that's Wienecke. That was Wienecke, I think, your race 1 winner.
It was indeed Cody Wienecke who won the first race of the night, and he had assistance. That is a huge off in the battle for the championship. He was not able to right that truck either, Nolan. So Cody Wienecke goes from the penthouse to the outhouse and tows to pit road. Here's the contact. It's from way back. It's a touch, and he tries to stay in the gas before the K-rail comes up, just gets on his side, and he could not bring it over, and that is dozens and dozens of championship points that he sees pass him by.
On board with Wienecke, slides it up into turn 2. There's a small little hip, and just clips the K-rail, turns it over, and didn't even get hit once or twice while it was upside down, and unfortunately, yeah, right there, he got nailed, and it wasn't enough to roll him over. You heard him, though, spool up the throttle and try to get that truck tipped over like we saw Teal able to do in turn 2 on in race number 1. Didn't end up going out that way, though, for him.
And that's a case where it's certainly not his fault that he gets hit from behind, but the safer decision is let off the throttle, straighten the truck, continue on to make up for the time lost. But again, he tried to stay in the gas, just got onto those K-rails, and I don't want to be anywhere near those things. If I'm in one of these Pro 2 trucks, it's only going to cause trouble. And again, that contact has dropped Wienecke well down and out of the conversation. He is currently last of the 16 trucks currently scored on the leaderboard. So Wienecke frustrated about that, but about a huge opportunity for the 3 drivers up front now, Nolan, because not only are they outrunning Wienecke, but they can pass him, you know, kind of significantly, I would say, in the championship. Kusin, King, Matag, 1, 2, and 3. Matag looking for a repeat win. He's sitting in 3rd, but both Kusin and King, top 5 in the championship, looking for their first wins of the year.
A lot of drivers looking for first-time victories so far, and these wins are going to be absolutely massive in terms of the overall championship as well. We wrap it up the first half of your Spec series here in this one, and we'll see how this will shake up then. Of course, we will roll down over to Wild Horse Pass 1 week from now. And of course, over there, it is a much more technical racetrack than I think Wild Horse is. And it's a fairly tight racetrack as well. It's not one to be taken lightly. So we'll see how the points will shake up rolling into there. I think that's going to be one of those races where passing it's going to end up being much like the Martinsville Speedway. You can do it. It's not going to be very pretty, though.
Sometimes you have to force the issue, per se, and well, that's what the cars up front are going to be thinking about. This has been a spicy battle back here in 8th position. Mageshik is not making friends. Braden Ward's complained about a bit of the contact. Let's see, there's the payback as he sends it off and into turn 1. Somebody else cartwheels behind them, and off of the racetrack goes Tyler Lugo. Victory. He's in the fence before he straightens it back out. He'll get straightened and passed by Cohen Attard, and they are throwing haymakers back in the midfield.
Tell you what, with how aggressive Mageshik is throwing it in there, he gave no regard whatsoever to the 79 of Alexander Good. And in fact, I think he used Good there as a bit of a stopping pick. If he doesn't calm things down, I'm willing to bet somebody's going to repay that back and then some, as Alexander Good trying to close up to the back of the 253. And it wouldn't be the first time we've seen drivers ejected even from this event for unsportsmanlike conduct. We saw that happen to both Kyle Knott and Blake Reynolds for incidents earlier on tonight. So will we potentially see one more in this fight for 8th, 9th, and 10th?
It has been a fun one. Great battling in the midfield. The battle up front continues on as well. A lot to be decided, but we get 2 laps to go this time by. Checking it back in with your leaders. It is still Keenan Kusin leading as he has the entire scheduled distance, and a good exit for him off of turn 4. That time means as he sees 2 laps to go, he's got a big advantage over King going into turn number 1. About equidistance is first, second, and third apart, and then they're a mile ahead of Christina Ryan and John Nix, who are in a good battle for 4th and 5th. Even P6 Mile Morse there also, so a lot to be decided here in the closing laps of the Spec feature.
Only about a lap and a half left to go. Crystal King trying to reel in the gap. The lap times are almost dead even between Kusin and Crystal King, separated by less than a 1/10 of a second on their overall lap times, whereas Drake Matag was almost a half second a lap quicker. So Matag still has a shot to potentially go for a race win here, but he's really going to have to make something happen here as we'll take the white flag this time around.
White flag in the air and 1 lap to go. You're on board with Matag. Bark River feature race number 1 winner. Wants to get a lot of points right here and right now, but he hasn't found an answer here at Wild West just yet. He finished 4th in the first feature, currently sitting 3rd. The Insonic King, they touch in turn 2.
Small hip check, but they keep it straight. Crystal King trying to hang on to the 3 and 4. There it is again. The bump and run here at the Wild West Motorsports Park. But Matag going to lift down and give that one back to Crystal King.
And what that did was it made the focus the fight for second, not the fight for the race lead, which means that Keenan Kusin will be unopposed as he comes off of turn number 4. It is his first win of the season. Kusin wins the Spec feature race here at Wild West. And a spin in turn number 4, it's Nix. Nix was fighting with Christina Ryan, and there must have been contact between those two because he went around and got passed by both Ryan and I believe it was Trevor Teal.
There certainly was, but it was of his own doing. Tried to send it in to take out Christina Ryan in the final corner, although it didn't end up going out the way he thought. He ends up tagging the back end of the 80, but it was not the 80, but in fact the 29 that spun himself around. You could say that it was some instant karma for the likes of John Nix on an over-opportunistic move into that final corner.
A lot of drivers tried to get a little bit extra out of this one as we take a look at your full race results for feature race number 2. It is the first win of the season for Keenan Kusin. He is the 3rd different Pro 2 Spec winner in the 4 features that we have seen so far this year. Crystal King comes up just shy, but gets a good points haul. And Drake Matag in 3rd. All those drivers going to make up a lot of points on the championship leaders headed into this afternoon. Ryan, Morse, Teal, Ward, Nix, Mageshik, and Good, the top 10. But I think the real story is that driver in P13, Nolan.
It certainly is, as Cohen are going to be taking, of course, that 11th spot. Tyler Luca Vickery was the last driver to finish this race. Cody Wienecke not finishing this race after he had himself a bad roll in turn number 2. Just got caught in the wrong spot, finds himself out of this race, and this could be championship crippling for the 903. Austin McLaughlin going to be down at that 14th position with Blake Reynolds in 15th. Kyle Knott was 16th, and Solomon Borschinger opted not to take to the starting grid for race number 2.
As I look top to bottom at your full race results here for the second feature race of the afternoon, as we get set to turn our program over to the open side of things, getting by trackside with a couple of your top finishers from the Spec class. Let's talk first with your feature race number 2 winner. It's Keenan Kusin, first win of this Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship season. Keenan, congratulations on the win in this one. Certainly the invert from having that strong finish in the first feature helped you, but man, Crystal and Drake were all over you there.
Yeah, Crystal was keeping me honest the whole time, and we raced pretty hard at Bark River last week, and I think maybe it was on the brake a bit too hard going into 1 and may have just got into her. So I'm like, I don't know if she's going to ship me on the last lap. But all I could do is really just put my head down, run the laps I knew I was capable of running, put the truck on pole before I knew there was an invert. It would have been cool if I would have looked. But I knew I had speed. I knew maybe I wasn't the fastest one out there, but if I could just stay consistent, I had a real shot. And luckily, we put the 03 in the victory lane today.
How do you compare this one to some of the other tracks we've got here on the calendar? A term that Nolan and I have used tonight is kind of point and shoot racetrack, where you've got an uphill, a downhill, but they're all kind of hairpins all over the place. How does that fit into your driving style, and how did that affect the racing tonight?
I mean, this compared to Bark River's got a little bit of everything, which is why I like it a lot. But here compared to the other 2 tracks we have, there's not as much banking in the corner. I come from a sim drifting background. Shout out to the good folks at Esports Drift Association, ESDA. So it fits my style a little bit of just getting that truck in tight and then really straightening it off the corner. I don't really know how to use the banking that well. So if I was I knew out of all the tracks, it was either here or Bark River. Bark River, we did okay, but I think we really showed up tonight.
Well, it is a good finish for you here, and I think looking for that consistency as well, a step in the right direction. When we do this again with the Spec class, next week we're going to get a Wild Horse, so we just talk about some of the unique characteristics about this Wild West racetrack. What's on the docket, and what are some of the keys to success to get another result like this in 7 days?
Know where the speed is, be clean. I think that's basically dirt roads Monza. It's really tight, really small, definitely a lot of opportunity for sends. If you know where to put the truck, especially this Pro 2, doesn't like those whoops towards the end. You really got to be careful on those. So it's going to reward those that are brave. And I think you're going to see a little bit more dies for passes and whatnot. But it should be a good rest of the season. There is no bad track on the schedule, to be fair.
We're looking forward to catching you in 1 week's time. Can you appreciate the time, and congratulations on the feature win.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you very much to everybody who supported me over on Twitch as well. And thank you to Racecraft for streaming. We'll see you next week, hopefully.
He's your race winner here in the Spec class for feature race number 2 at Wild West. Keenan Kusin gets his first race win of the season, and it will continue the post-race conversations for the Spec class. Nolan has got a couple more of our podium finishers lined up and available. I see Crystal King, Drake McTagg walking around the pit area. We'll see which one of them you can grab next and get some thoughts. Looks like you've been able to rope in Crystal King, who comes home second in this one. The top 5s continue. Nolan, you're down trackside.
I think we should be good now. Sorry, some minor technical difficulties on my end on that one. But Crystal King, again, joining us up here tonight. And what a race it was from you over the course through this Spec series. And I think overall, it's going to be a good point haul leading into the third race, over at Wild Horse.
Yeah, it was good. I kept it nice and consistent, and I was able to stay out of the chaos that was behind me. So that was my main goal coming in here.
Just kind of walk us through how different a racetrack this one was in comparison to Bark River and what the challenges for next week might be looking like. Is, of course, while it might be compared a lot with Wild Horse, Wild West, still, I think, a completely separate circuit in comparison.
Yeah, this track's tough. I mean, Bark River is its own ball game. Like it's so technical and it's got right hands and left hands and all that good stuff. But with Wild West, you just got your 180s and your straights, and you can come in so fast sometimes that you can miss your corner. So I noticed Keenan was blowing his corner a little bit, but I would also blow my corner, or I would have a good corner and he'd have a bad one, and he'd have a good one and I'd have a bad one. So it's really about consistent with this track, being consistent.
Well, we will hopefully be seeing you back up on the podium and potentially over in victory lane next week, and we'll continue to watch that championship hopes for you, and hopefully it'll lead to something more when we get up and around to Crandon, and who knows, maybe you'll find yourself back on top before the end of the season. Thanks for joining us here tonight, Crystal. Congratulations once again.
Thank you. Just give a shout out to Factory Sim Sport and Legion and Shenandoah and Shine.
That's Crystal King joining us up here in the broadcast booth, finishing, of course, runner-up over in race number 2 of the Spec Series at the Wild West Motorsports Park, and I'll leave that down to Evan then to talk with Drake Matag.
Right, it was a race win in week number 1 for Drake and a podium here at Wild West. So, Drake, congratulations on a lot of that consistency. That's going to be what's required, obviously, in such a short season to find success in the championship. But from going as a race winner at Bark River to a P3 here tonight, did you feel like maybe Wild West was a bit of a more challenging for you?
Yeah, I definitely didn't put in enough time. I got home yesterday, decided to put some laps down, and felt like it was, worth it to come out here and battle with everybody, and it was a lot of fun. Total bummer round 1. iRacing decided to stop reading my pedals and everything, and went straight into a pole and ended the day there. But I'm glad to come back and have a consistent round here at Wild West.
This is a very hairpin style racetrack. Obviously, you've got some tabletops and some whoop sections, rhythm areas in between the corners, but it's a hairpin and a hairpin and a hairpin and a hairpin. I mean, how did that play into the racing tonight? Certainly, we saw a lot of aggressive and physical racing in the midfield. Fortunately for you, for the most part, you were high enough up that it didn't look like you got caught up in too much of it. Yeah,
I was able to avoid a little bit of it. If you don't hit your lines perfectly and your braking points perfectly on this track, you're blowing corners, and that's what decides if you're in the top 5 to the top 10. You have to hit your marks. And towards the end of the race, I was turning on the burners, and I was able to reel it in and got close to Crystal, but got into her, so I wanted to back off just so I wouldn't, cause a penalty or anything like that.
How would you assess how things have been for you? A feature race win, a couple of podiums so far as we reach the halfway point of this Spec calendar.
We'll see. The consistency it so far is there, but it's only maybe halfway or whatever it is through this season, and it's hard to know at this point. Everybody could put in 100 extra laps than you coming into this next race, and it sounds like a lot, but really that's it's a lot that goes into it, and it's going to be competitive for sure.
We look forward to seeing what you can do in 1 week's time when we go racing for round 3 at Wild Horse. But until then, Drake, we appreciate the time and congratulations on some good finishes here tonight.
Thank you, guys.
That is your P3 finisher in the second feature race of the night for the Specs. And a big thanks to all of our top 3 finishers, Keenan Kusin, Crystal King, and Drake Matag. Let's move on to the open side of the program as the festivities roll on tonight. Keaton Swain and Josh Edmondson on the front row for feature race number 1 for the open class of this Pro 2 Championship. Connor Berry and Tyson Miller will make up row number 2. Anthony Janes and Daniel Aish, your top 6.
7th place gonna go to the likes of Zachary Drapkin, with Trenton Briley bringing up that 8th position to number 17. Paul Mikolajczyk going to be back in that 9th position, with Sean Winkler in 10th. Greg Johnson and Taylor Vanderbush rounded out the top 12.
And to put a bow tie on things, one more row. It'll be Mike Budzian and James Burke on row number 7. It is a look top to bottom at your Pro 2 Open starting grid. So just like the Spec Series, Nolan, 2 different race winners, correct me if I'm wrong, from Bark River 2 weeks ago, and Keaton Swain and Josh Edmondson.
You are indeed correct. So that's going to make it, shall we say, interesting then over the course of the evening. We'll be seeing if that'll be leading to potentially an extension in the points lead, or who knows, maybe somebody's going to take matters into their own hands and say, I think it's time you give somebody else a shot up at the top.
We have seen only one driver so far get a repeat win. It was Winecki, who won the second feature at Bark River and then the first feature tonight at Wild West in the Spec class. And both Swain and Edmondson, your open class winners from Bark River a week ago, are in very good position to do that here tonight, as they will start in second and in third position. Of course, you have to remember, though, the invert based on the qualifying order. Connor Berry, the third fastest car on the grid now, but he was actually the best in queues. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well, as Connor Berry gets the flip and he ends up third on the grid in this one. So Nolan, no change of vehicle, still these Pro 2 off-road trucks. Explain to the fans at home the difference between the Spec and the open category.
Well, the difference is, of course, with the Spec series, everybody's running the same truck. You're all on the same setup. It's all down to the driver. Here, not so much. You have free reign in how you set up these trucks, and that could have the smallest of differences in how the trucks perform, which could mean the difference between a victory and a loss.
14 new competitors lined up and ready to rock as the pace truck sets sail, and so does front row for Keaton Swain. Green flag in the air. We're racing in feature race number 1 for the Pro 2 open trucks at Wild West. They will barrel their way through turn 1, but it's a huge advantage early for pole sitter Keaton Swain.
Off and truly clear as he rocket down the hill into turn number 2. Still looking mostly clean. No wrecks just yet at the tail end of the field. It is single file all the way back until about 6th, 7th place. Then you got Trenton Briley trying to get up the inside of Daniel H. But they're going to get themselves single filed out now, as a bit further back, this is way down the field. You see Greg Johnson and Paul Mikolajczyk working to see if they can't fight against one another. And how about the 50? Throwing it into the final corner. Gets up and around Mikolajczyk. That was the move for 12.
And smacking the wall there as they come down the front straightaway. A bit of contact there as well in the side-by-side battle. That's way in the back of the field for Greg Johnson and Paul Mikolajczyk as they will fight through, but so far, everybody who started this one still on track. Same can't be said for the Spec classes earlier. A lot of touching in the midfield. These hairpin corners are going to set you up for that. A bit of a mistake from Budzian towards the rear. But up front, Keaton Swain's early advantage has evaporated. And Josh Edmondson hot in tow, closing on your race leader.
At Bark River, I found that the open races had a tendency to be a lot more intense than the fixed races were, and that's not something we're used to seeing very often. So we'll be continuing to kind of look in and see how this is going to be panning out, as we'll see if that case will also ring true. But we had some real intense fixed races earlier on tonight, and so far it's been a relatively tame opening here in the Open Championship. It's been more or less single file, except for that battle for about 12th on back.
The battle for P12 has been a physical one, and it's been a desperation one just because the drivers back there are a little bit frustrated with a slow start to this one, but you're not seeing as much separation. I find that interesting, and obviously things are going to spread out over the course of this 10-lap race. I think mainly the reason we're so tight, Nolan, is because we didn't have a stack up. Nobody got flipped, knock on wood, yet. You would think that the open class, where drivers could make those tweaks to their trucks, would mean there would be more separation, as opposed to the fixed class, where everybody has the same truck, things would probably be tighter. But so far, the interval's much closer in this open race than what we saw in the Spec class earlier tonight.
Well, I think that is interesting, because I'm going to reference Bark River once again in the Open Championship, and you're half right. There actually was a much bigger field spread top to bottom. There was up to, I believe, just over a minute by the time you got down to the tail of the field from the race leader by the end of the Open Championship races. The difference was the battle packs themselves were so much closer. Instead of it being everybody just kind of separated out, you had 3 distinct battle packs. You had about a 4-car scrap for the lead. You had 5th and 6th in no man's land, and then 7th through 10th. They were locked in a fierce fight of their own all the way down until that checkered flag. And those were the gaps that really started to separate out, was the gaps between those individual packs as opposed to between each individual truck. And you have to wonder if potentially that might be track characteristics come into play.
And you can see the top three now trying to pull away as this kind of coliseum of a racetrack, very stadium style. It's a term that you had referenced earlier tonight, is not so inclined for drivers to spread out as maybe a Bark River, as a Crandon, some of those larger racetracks. This place still clocks in at 1.5 miles in length, but it feels a whole lot more claustrophobic than that. And somebody who's feeling that pressure is Swain. Edmondson caught up pretty quickly on lap number 2. He's been parked on the bumper for the last 3 laps. Edmondson, not really known as somebody, Nolan, who's just going to go and shove you out of the way at the first opportunity. He may have the better truck right now, but he's not going to force the issue. He's going to work over these next 5 laps and find an opportunity.
And sometimes that's what you got to do. If you only got one truck, you got to overtake to go for the lead. You got to try to find the weaknesses, right? Find out where you're better and where you're weaker on, so you can try to set yourself up for the points where you're stronger and maybe sacrifice a little bit more in the corners you're not as strong on instead of trying to make something happen. He's got to be careful, though, because remember, while Josh Edmondson might not be willing to shove Keaton Swain out of the way, you have to wonder, will Connor Berry right behind be taking the same approach? And sooner or later, if you get stuck behind the race leader for too long, it might not be too long where the driver behind you starts to make a move, saying, all right, you've been at it for long enough, time for me to take a swing at it. And they're not typically going to be asking for permission to fight their way through.
We have not seen a lot of polite engagements so far tonight. I don't think that is really the Pro 2 truck style. 4 laps to go in this race now as Barry struggling a little bit to hang on in 3rd. Tyson Miller comfortably 4th. Again, not a lot of changes. Your top 6 trucks all run in the exact order in which they started this race. Swain, Edmondson, Barry, Miller, James, Aish, your top 6. A swap for 7th and 8th sees Briley go up to P7, Drapkin drop to P8, but again, that's about it for movement in the top 10. There has not been a ton of it so far.
Apart from that opening lap, it's been an incredibly tame race. If we continue to look at the race leaders, I think if the 2 trucks outside of the top 2 that are the closest together would have to be the likes of James Burke and Greg Johnson for 11th and 12th near the tail end of the field. But even then, it's still relatively close enough to the same distance we've got amongst the top 3 as it stands. I think this has been one of the tamest off-road races in general that I think I've ever seen, let alone in the Pro 2 trucks.
You just kind of keep waiting, right, for that move to come, for the ball to drop, and we'll see if it indeed happens, because the pressure now started to mount for Edmondson. I talked about he's going to use these final 5 laps to make the move, and he knows, very aware at that time, no pressure, but he got to him. I've got 8 laps to do it. All right, 5 laps to do it, no worries. Coming to 2 laps to go. Well, what's it worth to you, right? Keaton Swain and Josh Edmondson running in 1st and 2nd are both of your race winners from a week ago in this open class at Bark River, and they're going to have 2 laps to go to figure it out here at Wild West.
Hard on the brakes once again into the first corner, not the final corner, but again with 2 laps to go, and now you see the 21 taking a more defensive line this time. Down the hill for turn 2, I think starting to realize that Edmondson might be getting a little bit more desperate here, so it takes a less than optimal line through the 2nd corner, but that'll allow him to track out wider in this short chute down to turn 3, and once again, Edmondson having to try to cross him over. He's gonna get to the back bumper that time around. Gave the smallest of nudges, just enough to say, hey, I'm right here. You might want to just open it up, and we'll do this the easy way or the hard way. But with 1 lap left to go, it's looking like the hard way is going to be the only way to get through.
And he's going to have 1 more time around this 4-turn, 1.5 mile off-road circuit to make it happen, because the white flag is in the air in feature number 1. Edmondson a little bit more aggressive this time, clamps down to the bumper. Does he look to make the move down the hill to turn 2?
Trying to make the look down the hill to turn number 2. Not going to be able to find the inside this time around. He will maintain that run, and I think that was it. I think this is going to go the way now of Keaton Swain.
Keaton Swain has got to play defense, rides the inside K-rail. There was no opening for Edmondson that time either. final corner. Hairpin, turn 4 to a long downhill run. Edmondson looks. There's no touch, though, and Keaton Swain will stay perfect. It's his second win of the season. Keaton Swain wins at Wild West.
Great win there for the likes of Keaton Swain, able to take that one home, and second win, of course, of the season. Now, question is, can Josh Edmondson follow that up with another race win as well? You're going to see the fight for spots just behind fly across the line. That was, I believe, Greg Johnson you saw actually managed to get up and around James Burke to turn number 1 on that final lap as well. So apart from that, though, in that opening lap, I think we only really saw the overtake in turn 1 of the last lap, and then around turns 2 to 3 on the first lap, and that was about it.
Yeah, there was not a ton late in this one. As we take a look at your full race results for the first feature of tonight's Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship Open class, Swain, Edmondson, Barry, your top 3. They'll be the invert as we go to the second feature of the night. And then Miller, Janes, the top 5. Aish, Briley, Drapkin, Winkler, Vandenbush, the top 10.
11th place going to go to the way of Greg Johnson with James Burke in 12th. Paul Migolichik down in that 13th spot with Mike Budzian down at 14th. Only 18 seconds separated the field, and that was I think that was the tightest margin from first to last we've had so far all season long.
And one thing that I heard a lot when we were in those spec races earlier is these drivers get a little bit of warm-up opportunity now before the second feature, Nolan, was a lot of sarcastic thanks, right? People getting run over. How many trucks were on their lid in those first 2 combined? 5, 6, right? The only thing I heard at the end of that first feature was courtesy of your winner, Keaton Swain, and he said, "Good race, Josh." Josh came back on the radio, said, "Yep, you too," right? I mean, not to say, Nolan, that you're looking at the difference between, say, Cup drivers and Xfinity drivers, but maybe, I mean, the names in this are people that have been around for some time. Maybe there's a little bit more maturity and respect. Listen, I could eat my words and it could get nasty, don't get me wrong, but it seemed like that battle for the race win there, well, it may not have been as thrilling as some of the other ones, had a lot of respect between 2 really veteran competitors.
And I think that's one of the big things to note about this field so far here as well. Because when people think off-road trucks, the ones that go jump, they tend to think, oh, it's just rednecks beating and banging around and just, throwing their weight around where they possibly don't have to and just making a mess out of everything. I think that race has proved that it is very much not the case. It is its own completely separate discipline that is taken very, very seriously, and there is a massive amount of respect and sportsmanship that was shown to that opening race. They could have gone the way of the stereotypes, just kind of bully everybody out of the way and go full send into the first corner, but that would make this demolition derby, which it is not. It is, in fact, a race. You want a demolition? Go to the Urbandale figure eight. That's all I have to say on that deal. Even go to the figure eight jump if you want to use the trucks for said demo derby. But here at the Wild West Motorsports Park, it's been nothing but respect so far from your Open Championship, and I'm hoping that second race is going to continue to prove me right, and we're not both going to end up eating our words for that one.
Yeah, I don't have any reason to believe that that's not going to be the case in this second feature. However, you can never say never as the clock ticks. And exactly, it ticks and ticks away. We will wait to see just what will happen as we have our first repeat winner of the year on the spec side of competition, as that one was won by Keaton Swain. So Swain won the first one last week. Edmondson won the second. Do we have a repeat tonight? Let's find out as we go trackside and take a look at your starting grid for feature race number 2. And again, it is an invert of the top 3. So Connor Berry goes 3-1. Edmondson stays P2. Swain goes 1-3. They will be your top 3 starters, and then everybody else starting based on finishing position. It's going to put Tyson Miller in 4th, Anthony Janes in 5th, and Daniel Aish in P6.
7th place going to go to the likes of Trenton Bailey with Zachary Drapkin in 8th. Sean Winkler 9th. Taylor Vandenbush going to be down in 10th. Greg Johnson and James Burke going to be rounding out the top 12.
And the lone roll on the backside, it'll be Paul Migolichik and Mike Budzian, your 13th and 14th starters. That is a look top to bottom at your Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship starting grid. We've seen 3 races so far tonight, 3 different winners. It was Winecki in the first of the Spec features, Kusin in the second, and here in the open class, first one, Witt to Keaton Swain. What'll happen in the final feature race of week 2? You're watching the Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship. Green flag is in the air.
Into the first jump, leading uphill. Connor Berry has the lead down to the opening corner. Josh Evanson trying to pick up second. Here comes Keaton Swain for third. We're going to bottle him up in turn 1. Get us all through safe and sound. A little bit of nose-tail contact, but other than that, we keep things going straight. Daniel H. side by side with Anthony James in the run. Down to turn 2, and holy cow, a full send. And it's now a parking lot down into turn number 2. That was Tyson Miller that got kicked up and over.
And there was an apology there as it was a bit of a hip check in the fight for 4th position that sent him up and over. And that is the first big incident we've seen in this open class tonight. And again, the losing end of all of that was the positions lost for Tyson Miller. Up front, though, it didn't change a ton. They were ahead of the contact, and what it has done is spread things out a little bit. What we talked about opening of that first feature was how tight things were. Well, with that contact in the battle for 4th, Nolan, it has kind of splintered the midfield a little bit away and given these race leaders more of a cushion than they've had previous. It doesn't mean there's not battles in the midfield. You're looking at one right now as it's a battle between Tyson Miller and Zachary Drapkin for P6 and 7.
I think now they've started to realize what they were kind of missing out on with all the single file action out of race 1, and now they're starting to get the gloves out here in race number 2 to see if they can get something sorted, and they're certainly putting on a heck of a show for us here at the Wild West Motorsports Park. Continuing to watch on with Miller and Drapkin. I think what's notable for Miller, he's the truck driver that got kicked up and over in turn number 2. He only lost 3 spots out of all of that, out of the possible 10 that there was to lose. I think that's commendable that you go for a complete roll, you lose 3 positions total, and still keep your spotting in the top half of the field.
Yeah, it's a pretty good run, and we'll see what Tyson Miller is able to do with this one. 4th in the first feature. We'll see if he can continue that here in the second one as time starts, though, to run away. It has been a defensive game, Nolan. The pole sitter has won every single race so far tonight, and there's a flip back in the rear of the field as Trenton Briley mixing it up with Mikolajic for 11th and 12th position.
It looked like it might have been Mikolajic that just kind of got in on the wrong side of that deal, and through no fault of his own, it looked to me just to be sort of racing the incident. One truck throws it just a little bit too hard. The one behind just left with nowhere to go, and that's going to leave us now with those 2 drivers fighting that way at the back for 11th and 12th, while you still got the top 3, Berry, Edmondson, Swain, still rocking it away, and Keaton Swain has not been able to close up at the back end of Josh Edmondson to go for that second position. I think it's worth noting as well, remember, Edmondson could very well have taken both feature wins over out of last week at Bark River Motorsports Park, and he almost, in fact, did take one out of the last week as well. The only reason Keaton Swain won it, Edmondson ran out of fuel coming out of the final quarter.
One thing else to circle back before trucks were flipping in the back and interrupted my train of thought, Nolan, was that every winner tonight has led every single lap from the number 1 position. I would think that a racetrack like this, where it's hairpins, you're constantly kind of vulnerable by leaving the inside open, would be a place where track position wouldn't matter as much, because if you're faster and you want to be aggressive, you can do it. But we've seen drivers sit on the bumper and listen, somebody could just drive through anybody at any moment and be done with it. Edmondson could usher Berry out of the way quite easily if he decided. I just do think it's interesting. I would have thought that these hairpins would have lent to more passing, but at least in the battles for the race lead tonight, not the case so far.
Well, typically they would, right? I mean, you cover this track in asphalt, take away the chums, and you throw some MX-5s around here. Absolutely. It would be a track full of overtaking. The reason why it's not, remember, these trucks, it's all about horsepower. They don't really generate a whole lot of draft, and I don't think any draft even that they're able to probably work with, especially down that long straightaway. And I think that's part of what's making this difficult, right? They're not able to properly get up there and fight with each other because it's hard braking zone into hard braking zone. There's not a whole lot of the sweeping bends because it's really more of the sweeping corners like we saw at Bark River that allow you to take the various lines, experiment around a little bit. Is it faster to take an early apex or a late apex? When there's only one apex on the whole corner and there's a single line throughout the whole racetrack to be fast, it does make it relatively difficult to get alongside each other without having to bully somebody through. And that is something we've been seeing, is these drivers haven't been eager to kind of push through each other to make these spots happen.
And watching them continue to do battle right now is look at this group in the midfield. The 56 of Drapkin pinched in the middle as it's a four-way battle from what is going to be Tyson Miller on back. Miller, Drapkin, Burke, and Vandenbush all on top of each other. It's the battle for 6, 7, 8, 9. In two sets of 2x2, they'll come ripping down the hill with some more contact and a couple of groups of side by side. This will be interesting as they now go back up the hill to the hairpin turn number 1.
You saw the 7 of James Berg almost landed on top of Zachary Drapkin there as we fired up over the jump. 3 wide now down the hill, and it is Drapkin caught in the middle. From the left side, Vandenbush gonna back out. Tyson Miller gonna throw it into turn number 2. Make something happen. This is the kind of race we saw at Bark River. We got one up and over that second corner as well. That is gonna be Vandenbush, who did go over in that second corner after he got hip checked by the 7 to roll it. And all of a sudden, the clean race that we were so used to seeing in race 1, it's come to an end.
Second rollover of the night. That one was courtesy of James Burke, who apologizes to Taylor over the radio. And again, admittedly, didn't look egregious, but a little bit of a hip check, as you mentioned, sent him up and over. And it's a tough break there for Vandenbush, who drops all the way back down now to P12 after having started this race in the number 10 spot and made up a lot of ground. The midfield battle not done yet, though, as it continues on with the remaining parties. Zachary Drapkin and Tyson Miller. The truck just up the road from them is having a real easy night right now. Daniel H. and Anthony Janes kind of in no man's land, 5th and 4th respectively, as there's a nice move up through, and Tyson Miller can't find a way by Zach Drapkin, who continues to park the bus in that preferred line.
Oh, I think Miller's going to get him here, though, into the final corner. He's making that look for the inside, and he is right there as well. Unless Drapkin does that, he's going to bike it up into turn number 4. And the 56 almost did what Knott did earlier on in the fixed championship, where Knott biked it up and onto 2 wheels into that final corner and went for a tumble. Drapkin able to keep it steady, but it's going to unsettle just enough to allow Miller back to the inside for turn number 1 with 2 laps to go. Miller clips the inside K-rail, and that's going to cause a pile of behind that ends in James Berg being spun around.
So the midfield is where the drama is tonight, as it was Miller on the K-rail. His incident caught Burke in it. Burke turned around after he spun Vandenbush earlier. So the midfield is where it gets a little bit sloppy, and they are not clear yet as they come to 1 lap to go. Up front, Connor Berry quietly in search of his first win of the season.
Final lap for Berry as he continues to work his way down the hill and in towards turn number 2. Will it be win number 1 for the number 2 and our 4th different win here tonight? Josh Edmondson right behind, trying to say no sir, as Edmondson will throw it to the inside of turn number 2.
Seen a couple of good results for Connor Berry, a P2 finish in both of the feature races last week, but right now trying to get one extra step up on the podium. 1 corner away, his race to lose. Edmondson, half a second back, has no look as they head to turn 4, and Connor Berry enters the chat. He wants this Pro 2 championship. He wins at Wild West.
What a great win for Connor Berry. Becomes yet another different race winner, and that is going to be, I think, our 3rd different race winner overall in the Open Championship, and that's going to be great news for him. So 3rd winner in 4 races, 4th different winner tonight, and what a way to end off the Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship at the Wild West Motorsports Park.
An exciting 2nd week of 4. With Wild Horse and Crandon still to come, man, are these championship fights only getting tighter. not more spread out. We take a look at your full race results from this second feature. Connor Berry, pole to checker, gets his first win of the season. And you're absolutely right, Nolan. Third different open race winner of the year, joining the couple of drivers lined up behind him. Josh Edmondson's got one win so far. Keaton Swain won the earlier feature. He finishes third in this one. Anthony James is fourth tonight. Daniel H comes home in fifth. Zach Drapkin to P6. Tyson Miller in seventh. Greg Johnson eighth. Sean Winkler ninth. And Micah Boodzian rounds out your top 10.
Moving on down through the field, you're going to have James Burke down to the 11th position. Taylor Vandenbush, after going up and over, going to find himself down in 12th. Trenton Briley going to be in 13th. And Paul McGolichik down in that 14th spot. But critically, every driver finishing on the lead lap.
It's looked at the bottom at your full race results. Let's get a word with your top finishers in this one as Connor Berry turns the P2s into a win. Connor, congratulations. You hadn't finished worse than third yet, but I know getting that one extra spot and winning that second feature meant a lot to you.
Yeah, our speed was good. We had to start third inside the third one because we qualified in first, so the invert was 3. So I kind of like just got like stuck in that. I kind of just got like stuck in that spot. I was the fastest on track, but it was too hard to gain because I was trying to not bump Josh going into turns 1 and 2, so I was kind of just like stuck, but and then I was able to start in first for the second one, and yeah, I was able to lead all of them, and I got first.
What was it about Wild West that played into your driving style? Obviously, you found success last week at Bark River. You were consistent here tonight, but this racetrack not like Bark River. What makes Wild West so unique?
Yeah, I think here it's all about being smart and smooth. It definitely it will favor the guys who are smooth on the steering wheel, which is big, and I feel like I did that good. And in the second one, I was under pressure, and I did not make one single mistake. So I think here it is all about being smart, and I think that was big.
Well, you finished so far this year second, third, and first. That seems like the numbers that I would expect to see out of you, and that could keep you in contention for the championship. We know it's going to be tight between you, Josh, and Keaton. What do you have to do at Wild Horse next week to get another win?
I think just be myself. It's definitely a track that is arguably my best one. I think I can win there. If I start in fourth, I think that I can win. If I start in first, I think that I can win. It's definitely a track that is good. So I think if we can win there, we will have a shot at this. But it's all just about being smart and smooth, and I think that we can go there and win.
Well, we're looking forward to that race in 1 week's time. But Connor, we appreciate you giving us the time here. Congratulations on the win. Anybody you want to say hi to?
Sure. A big thanks to CBR, General Tire, IMB Simware, that the Nitro Circus, and you guys for this stream.
We appreciate having the chance to watch you on track, Connor. Again, congratulations on the win. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Well, tell you what, Nolan, I would be worried if I'm the rest of the field and Connor Berry says, yeah, the one up next, it's my favorite track. We'll see how that one plays out. Second place in this second feature goes to Josh Edmondson. It's another good haul of points for him in your track side with our P2 finisher in the second feature.
Not just the P2 finisher, but also P1, the first feature as well. So, Josh Evanson, it was a win last week, but today it was only a runner-up on both one of those. But it seemed passing was certainly a premium, and I have to say it's commendable the amount of respect you gave to Connor Berry not to run him over in those closing laps in both of our feature races tonight.
Yeah, it's tough to pass here when you're similar speed, and obviously Connor and Keaton are both really fast. I think we were all within a tenth or so in qualifying. So it's extremely hard to pass without just dooring them and risking maybe getting wrecked yourself, getting caught on the K rail or something, because these hairpin corners are so tight. Yeah, it's really tough to pass unless you get a mistake. And unfortunately for me, neither Keaton or Connor really made a mistake in front of me, and I couldn't find a way around them.
Seeing passing tonight was certainly something difficult to come by, not just for you, but for the rest of this field as well. It's not like we saw at Bark River at all compared to when we rolled down to the Wild West Motorsports Park this week. Why don't you walk us through how this track potentially may have contributed to the vastly different style of racing we saw?
Yeah, it's basically just long straightaways into hairpins. So unless you get a good run off the corner on the guy in front of you, you're not going to be able to get next to him or even get in and hit a door without risking going too far to the inside and getting into the K rail. Like I said, if you hit with them, so it's really tough. And then these guys. Again, didn't make any mistakes, so I was never able to get that run. I got next to Keaton in the middle of the corner the one time, but he's a wise enough racer. He just left a little room and then had the inside in the next corner because they kind of flip back and forth. So, it's just tough. This is the hardest track to pass at, in my opinion. It's my least favorite track to race at. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe we can make some moves at Wild Horse.
Of course, Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park is coming on up next. It's a track that, in some manners, is quite similar to the Wild West Motorsports Park, but in some cases, it is completely different. It tends to be a bit more condensed than the racing we saw here tonight. What do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be like when we swing out to Wild Horse next week?
Yeah, I expect a little more contact. That one is a little tighter, like you said, so I think there's going to be a little more contact. There is kind of multiple lines there. Through the whoops is really tough to keep the truck straight too, so it's also it's a more technical track, so it's easier to make mistakes. So I think you'll see a lot more passing there and hopefully some better racing.
Well, fingers crossed we'll be seeing the racing just as good as it was here tonight, and hopefully we'll see you back up on top before long. Thanks for joining us tonight here, Josh. Congratulations once again on the P2.
Yeah, appreciate it. Just got to shout out you guys for doing the broadcast, and then everybody on the team, Connor out here racing, and then Sean and Paul and Racecraft. Got Nitro Circus, Next Level Racing, Apex Gaming PCs, and Pimax VR.
As Josh Edmondson joins us here tonight from second place on the podium. We'll move on down to the likes of Keaton Swain and his number 21 machine. It was third place in feature 2, but a race win in feature number 1. And Evan, you're standing by with him.
That's right. We're down trackside with Keaton Swain and Keaton the Invert. I think the story of the night, right? Courtesy of the Invert for the first feature. You start up front, you finish up front. Then courtesy of the Invert for the second one, you start third and finish third. But you, Josh, and Connor all look so even tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Me, Josh, and Connor are really close on time. So kind of just whoever either gets an invert or qualifies first. If there is no invert, it's usually how it ends because nobody makes mistakes and we're all so close on times. It's just kind of a train. And Josh was on that first race was pressuring me a little bit, and luckily I was able to hang on to it there. I just tried to minimize my mistakes, and luckily he wasn't able to get around me. But that second race, I think I was pushing a little too hard, trying to reel him in, and was just making too many mistakes there.
A conversation that Nolan and I had upstairs was that at a racetrack like this, where almost everything's a hairpin, essentially, I would think that you'd be a lot more vulnerable for those dives down to the inside. We certainly saw that in midfield, contact guys door banging. Didn't see that up front in the top 3. Is that because it's not really that vulnerable, or is it just you guys aren't going to be running each other over in the top 3? You're going to race hard but clean?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. We want to race each other hard, but also race each other clean. The big thing in the Pro 2, when you throw it in on entry, you kind of open it up for the guy behind you, and it allows them to squeak inside. But once you straighten it back out on exit, it kind of typically puts someone into the K rails on those 180s. So kind of got to be careful. You don't want to screw your race up there on the first couple of turns, or trying to pass someone, because obviously it's also a train. So once you make one mistake, you could be getting passed from the person behind. So you just got to kind of mind your P's and Q's and, just try to get around the track without making too many mistakes.
What can you do to find some separation? I mean, Connor says that we're going to go to Wild Horse next week. That's his favorite track. You've got 2 race wins. You're the first to multiple race wins this season. When you're so even with guys like that, what can you do to find some separation now that we're 4 down and 4 races to go to try to win this title?
That's a great question. I don't know. Luckily, next week, there's a couple different line options with the Pro 2s. You can go through the whoops. and some guys go around him. So that could open up some passing opportunities with slide jobs going into the last turn there at Wild Horse. So I don't know, just laps and maybe try and find something in the setup that can give us an advantage for next week. But we'll get to work and see what we can find.
Well, we appreciate the time. I'm going to let you get out of here. Before we do, Keaton, anybody you want to say hi or thanks to?
Yeah, I just got to thank everyone at Factory Sim Sport, Appliance Parts Company, Sim Coach Pedals, everyone that helps out Josh's league, and you guys for doing the broadcast.
Well, congratulations on a successful night for you, a win and a third. Best of luck. Hopefully for your sake, we're chatting again in 1 week's time at Wild Horse.
Yeah.
That is your third place finisher in this second feature, but I think the notable storyline there, Nolan, is one of your feature race winners tonight, Keaton Swain, with his second victory of the season. And a lot of parallels from the Spec class to the Open class. One driver gets their second win of the year in both. In the Spec category, it was Wienecke. In the Open class, it was Swain, but the Swain, Edmondson, and Barry battle going to be another classic, just as it is every year here with the Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship. Of course, the defending Pro 2 champ Keaton Swain from 2022 is the first to strike gold twice, but we'll just see. It doesn't matter if you're getting all these race wins, Nolan, if you're only getting a point or two ahead.
It certainly doesn't. I mean, remember, it's one of those things where the points battle can be oh so tight, and it does mean that every single point and every single position is going to matter. So while some drivers right now might be considered happy enough to call it, well, feature race 1, I'll take that win, and then I'll just be happy to ride around in third in feature race number 2, you're not going to be able to sustain that strategy through the likes of the Wild Horse Motorsports Park, and of course Crandon coming on up at the very end of the season. There's only 4 total races left to go. You need every spot that you can muster.
And we're looking forward to the second half of the season. Round number 3 from Wild Horse Pass comes at you next Wednesday night with a 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time start. Double features on deck again for both the Spec and the Open categories of these Pro 2 trucks. Until then, though, that is it for us here tonight from Sparks, Nevada's Wild West Motorsports Park. On behalf of our entire team at Racecraft TV and for everybody at the Virtual Off-Road Racing Series Pro 2 Championship, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and congratulate all of your feature race winners tonight as Wienecke, Kusin, Swain, and Barry find victory lane. 4 different race winners in the 4 features on the night. We are halfway through, but there is plenty racing to come. As mentioned, round 3 of this championship will roll on May 17th at Wild Horse Pass. That race and every race of the Racecraft Off-Road Pro 2 Championship can be found exclusively here on Racecraft TV. Till next time, good night from Sparks.